Hello, everybody. Meteorologist Hutch Johnson. As we look across the great USA, we have very quiet weather across the lower 48, but the main event, Hurricane Milton, now a Category 4 storm. In this update, we're going to go over what's happening now, where it is expected to go, and all of the risks covered next, right here on Hutch's Weather. Let's get started with these right now conditions as we take a closer look at Milton's area of impact right now. It has increased in intensity and strength to a Category 4 storm overnight from a Category 1 storm a little bit late earlier in the day on Sunday. Now, as we see it winding its wheels, how strong are the winds? 139 mile per hour winds right now. It's moving to the east at 7 miles per hour. Now, if it stayed on that track, Florida would have nothing to worry about, but the cone here showing you where it is expected to go. Now, let's take a look at what we have with regards to this storm system and its threats. Let's get right into it here as we take a close view at what Milton is doing right now. So as we tilt in and look east, this cone is the National Hurricane Center's forecast for the most likely track that this storm will take. And we can't focus on that yet because it's a little bit too early. Notice how this cone gets wider as it moves towards the west coast of Florida or the Gulf Coast of Florida, with Tampa right in the middle. Now, the most likely track from the National Hurricane Center is for this storm system to hit and make landfall very close to the Tampa, St. Pete area. However, it could certainly deviate. So we really don't want you to focus on the exact point of impact. This storm is a Category 4 storm. Category 3 is a major hurricane. So let's review the Saffir-Simpson scale and take a look. Category 3, devastating damage likely with winds that are sustained at 111 to 129 miles per hour. We'll look at the forecast in detail here in a moment. This storm is expected to possibly increase to a Category 5 in the next 12 hours or so. Now, where it sits now, Category 4, 130 to 156 mile per hour winds. Catastrophic damage is likely from a Category 4, and Category 5 is over 157 miles per hour, including 157 miles per hour. So, taking you in just a little bit closer, let's get into the eye of the storm. You can see the well-defined structure of Milton as it's developing in the Gulf Coast. Now, just down to the south of Milton, presently, we have CANCUN. You can see the outer banks of CANCUN here. It will be skirting a little bit south yet. That's the forecast by the National Hurricane Center, which means the winds of hurricane strength will be impacting the northern coast of CANCUN. Then it is expected to later today take that turn and head northward. So let's talk about some of the details with regards to this hurricane. This is a look at the now conditions with this Category 4 level storm. Let's take a look at that cone. We're doing that right now. And let's talk a little bit more about the timing and timeline of the cone. So here we go. Let's go ahead and put up the official National Hurricane Center forecast. It's the yellow line in the middle of the cone. And if we zoom in just a little bit closer, you'll get a chance to see the details of the storm. Now you can see the little digits, and I'll have to zoom in so you can see them a little more clearly. By the time we get a little bit later in the day, that is a Category 5 expectation for this storm. So as we highlight this particular forecast point by the National Hurricane Center, they're expecting the winds to increase to 167 miles per hour, with gusts over 200 miles per hour. The peak strength of the storm coming within the next 10 to 12 hours, just north of CANCUN. Now, as we get a little bit, and the timing of this, by the way, is all the times on Hutch's computer here are Central Time. So this would be 7 a.m. as we go through 7 a.m. That is the forecast for that particular location. Now, as we go into the Cat 5 forecast for a little bit later, let's look at this. This is this forecast was valid 7 a.m. This is for 161 mile per hour winds with gusts just under 200 miles per hour as it's making the turn and heading more in the general direction of Tampa. So that is a look at that. Now, as it goes across the Gulf Coast and starts heading toward Florida bound on the Gulf Coast side, the strength of this storm is forecast to weaken a bit to a Category 4 storm with winds of about 155 miles per hour and gusts to 190 miles per hour. Still a very catastrophic level storm. And as we head into the day on Wednesday, the weakening trend is still in the forecast, but by weakening, we want you to remain aware. It's still Category 4 and will be very close to Category 4 and actually close to the high end of a Category 3 storm as it takes aim on the west coast of Florida, not far from Tampa. So here's what you can learn from this and a couple of things that we'll review. Number one, on the south side of wherever Milton decides to make landfall, that is where the storm surge will be the greatest. So as we go ahead and take a look at this area, anywhere from Tampa all the way down here towards Cape Coral and Point South is where the greatest heights of storm surge will be. Now, when we take a look at storm surge and we add in the fact of the tide at high tide, some of the storm surge levels or the water heights can be expected to be upwards of 5 to 15 feet tall or high, meaning that this storm surge will work its way well inland. Now, the course of the hurricane is expected to continue to weaken as it moves across a peninsula of Florida, but it will move very close to Orlando with the direct strong winds making landfall. So as we head into our Monday afternoon, hurricane force winds are expected to begin this evening or into the overnight hours for our coastal Florida locations and continue as we go into the day on Wednesday. Wednesday is the time of expected landfall for this particular storm system. So storm surge is going to be one of the threats with regards to this. Let's take a look at what the National Hurricane Center has to say with regards to Hurricane Milton. So to do that, we'll go ahead and take a look at their page directly so you can see with me, and maybe if you do have questions, you can jot those down. But essentially, there are many risks with regards to this particular system as we head through the next 36 to 48 hours and beyond. First thing, what is going to be the concerns with regards to storm surge? And I just circled this area of where this storm surge is likely to peak. Let's get right to the latest on that as we take a look at the browser here real quick. So let me pull that up. I got to find it here. Pardon me while I look for that. There we go. Sorry about the delay. Okay, so this is the National Hurricane Center's page. And on this page, if you were to peruse this, you can take a look at some of the concerns. Wind speed, storm surge, the number one risk and the number one threat is going to be that storm surge. So here's a look at their storm surge forecast peaks as we go ahead and take a look at this map. Now, where you see the reds, 8 to 12 foot storm surge, and we're talking from areas south of Yankeetown all the way down into Bonita Beach. So anywhere from 5 to 10 feet of storm surge here, but right in the area of impact. And that includes Tampa Bay, 8 to 12 feet, Sarasota, all the way down towards Fort Myers, all in the path of some significant storm surge. Now, if you are on the Keys or out on the Keys, 1 to 3 feet of storm surge is expected. And this is with the current track. So that is terrible storm surge, loss of power, flooding, rains, flash flooding, and as is often the case with hurricanes when they make landfall, there is the risk for tornadoes as well within or embedded within the system. So storm surge, that number one risk. And again, Tampa is right in the eye of where this thing is likely to be making its impact and points south right now with the present track of the storm. The next great risk, as we saw with the Helene situation, is the rainfall. But this system will track right over the peninsula of Florida with its flooding rains. And we don't have the mountains to worry about, but we do have the fact that the sea level and the level of Florida in some of its highest spots is barely at sea level itself. So there's going to be some concerns there. So for that, we'll take a look at the flooding and rainfall potential with Milton. And here we go. So as we load this map up, what you're going to see is some colors here, indicating where we see the bright oranges and the reds, some of the heaviest rainfall amounts. We'll put the key up here for you so you can see with me. Now, as you see the bright yellows, we're talking 6 inches of rain from Tampa. And on the north side of that storm center, the hurricane center, is where we could get some of the heaviest rain. Jacksonville, straight down through towards Orlando, where we get into the orange colors. We're talking 8 to 12 inches of rainfall. And isolated locations could see 15 inches of rainfall from Hurricane Milton as it works its way through. So we've talked about storm surge. We've got flooding rain potential with this as well. Now let's take a look at some of the wind speeds and the arrival times of these strong wind speeds. So first, as we take a look at when these will arrive, we're talking about the hurricane force winds now will arrive in the central Gulf, in the eastern Gulf, as we head into Tuesday night. And by Wednesday in the morning is when those hurricane force winds will be really hammering parts of the Gulf Coast of Florida. They will cross Florida fairly quickly as we go into the Wednesday night time frame as we go through. So one of the good things is this is going to take a short track across the peninsula of Florida. But the bad news is it's going to be a major hurricane, and that will bring with it some significant potential. And we saw the wind speeds earlier could approach with gusts upwards of 180 to 200 miles per hour as it works its way toward the Florida coast. So a lot of wind and a lot of concerning situation once again going on in the state of Florida with Hurricane Milton. I'll be back with some updates here on Hutch's Weather. If you have concerns, please keep in mind, before the storm even gets there, we are going to be having thunderstorms and rain, and that is what's going on in that area right now. As we take a look at the latest radar, here are the current conditions with regards to Milton and way outside of Milton. This is not directly a result of Milton, but Cape Coral towards Miami, seeing very strong thunderstorm activity working its way across the southern peninsula right now. Going out toward the ocean, we lose radar coverage out there where Milton is right now. But as it gets a little closer to the eastern portions of the Gulf Coast, we'll start to see the radar impacts of this potentially catastrophic storm working its way towards Florida. Thanks for watching. Again, if you're in the area, heed the warnings. I know that they are going through evacuation suggestions and what you need to know, but keep in mind this. We don't want to focus on the exact point of landfall, but wherever that does decide to go, because we do not have the skill in our forecast models to show that, we do have this wide-ranging area of impacts. Focus on the fact that it will be a major hurricane with potentially catastrophic damage potential to devastating potential as it works its way across portions of the Gulf Coast side of Central Florida as we head into the early hours of your Wednesday. I'm meteorologist Hutch Johnson. For more, stay tuned to your local National Weather Service forecast office and tune back in for updates right here.